Well, welcome to a new Team CGC 9.8 video. So today I wanted to focus on all my favorite X-Men CGC 9.8 comic books that are really collectible and investable. On the channel here, I've recommended in the past to really stick to like iconic brands. I think for the most part, most of your collection should be really iconic brands like Spider-Man, Batman, Avengers, and X-Men. And Star Wars would be on that list. I would say I've made videos in the past about that. X-Men, definitely a very iconic Marvel brand that's so collectible with a bunch of great key issues. So I got a full list of 7 here with some honorable mentions as well. And my list is going to focus really on sort of late 1970s and 1980s. And for me, this is kind of like the sweet spot for CGC 9.8 X-Men books. Pretty old, pretty rare, great stories, great first appearances, awesome, art and colors. Sort of a part of that whole John Byrne era of X-Men. And the prices in that era are, some of them are a lot, but they're not too expensive. Because I do really want to just talk about a couple books here, because the main books for sort of, modern era X-Men as we all know them, sort of, for me, really becoming a lot familiarized from X-Men from the X-Men animated series. So we all know that X-Men from Giant Size X-Men #1, and that's the first appearance of new X-Men, and it's like second appearance of Wolverine, I believe, and first appearance of like Storm and Nightcrawler and all the new X-Men. That's one book to get, but in the CGC 9.8, that's getting out of the price range that we're sort of in here on the channel here. You see a Giant Size X-Men sort of, I think it's like maybe $11,000 to $12,000 in the CGC 9.8 if you get a good deal, maybe even more than that. That's one to get though if you're in the market for those investment grade books that are, quite expensive, and obviously you don't have to get the CGC 9.8, but if that's your era. X-Men 94 is the first new team appearance in sort of the X-Men run of comics. And it's, I believe, second appearance of Storm and Nightcrawler and all them. X-Men 94 is such a hot, great book to get to if you're a big X-Men fan. X-Men 101, Origin First Phoenix, a great one to get, sort of, early Bronze Age we're talking here. And very expensive in the CGC 9.8 though as well. And X-Men 107 is first full Starjammers. I've seen this sell in the CGC 9.8 white pages looking really good for like $7,000, I believe it was. 6,000 or 7,000, I think it was. So those are just 4 big X-Men keys that certainly you want to consider, but out of our price range in the CGC 9.8, so they won't be really part of the list. So before I get into the list of 7, want to mention, I think it's a decent time right now to buy X-Men comics, and I think that's why I'm making this video too, because, there's rumors that X-Men is coming back to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so obviously I believe they were Fox or Sony production X-Men movies. Didn't really work out too much at the box office, but with the whole MCU production crew and the Avengers kind of production crew behind the scenes, I think X-Men could be a really big hit. So you kind of want to buy it before that happens, and I'm sure the books would be a lot more hot during the environment of a really cool MCU X-Men movie. So I think now's kind of the time to buy. So let's get into the list here. Really cool list of 7 and a bunch of honorable mentions too. Just wanted to kind of mention most of the keys from this era that I really mentioned sort of the late 1970s and 1980s. So first book on the list of 7 CGC 9.8 X-Men comics to invest and collect. It's Uncanny X-Men 117. A bit off the radar here. So this is a first appearance of Shadow King. And it's the origin of Professor X, too. So, in the Overstreet price guide, this book is not sort of singled out as a key. But I think it works as an underfollowed, affordable CGC 9.8 that you can buy in the range. And I'm sort of thinking about it at this time because I had saw an auction in Canada for one. And I believe it was maybe $230 or $250 was the price. So kind of attractively priced. CGC 9.8 white pages in the new case looking really good. Pretty nice centering as well. And I was watching it for 3 or 4 days, thinking about it, and it sold. So I wasn't able to pick it up. But first appearance of Shadow King. I'm big fan of X-Men animated series, as I said. And I remember the Shadow King show was quite good, where Shadow King was like a spirit, and he went in the bodies and took over the bodies, and There were maybe a two-part episode to that, I believe. So the Shadow King episodes were always pretty cool in the X-Men animated series. Plus you get the origin of Professor X. This is a 1979 book, so you're pretty old here for CGC 9.8. Census really quick, 143. 9.8's out there, 12.4% CGC 9.8 ratio, not too bad. So for kind of 250-ish, let's call it, I think the fair market value on Go Collect was like 220 or 230. So for that price, I think this is a really cool kind of underfollowed that, you know, is almost not even thought of a key right now, but could really become a key. And you get the origin of Professor X in there, pretty decent cover. And yeah, first appearance of the Shadow King. So that's one to start off on a bit of an underfollowed book. Now, second books here. I got, I'm going to do them sort of as a pair, because I got X-Men 120, a decent copy here in the raw, but I do got the CGC 9.8 version of X-Men 121, and going to kind of put these together and recommend them both together. We'll look on the census really quick for 121. There's 296 CGC 9.8s, and 12.7% the CGC 9.8 ratio. Yeah, so all these books have really, you know, nice, not extremely rare CGC 9.8 ratio, this 12.7% for a 1979 book, but still very, you know, very good, and that's why they're still somewhat affordable, but still a good investment grade ratio on Uncanny X-Men 121. But if you wanted to wrap it up a notch, you can go with Uncanny X-Men 120 in the CGC 9.8, where there's 68 of them in the CGC 9.8. And that 9.8 ratio is 4.1%, so extremely low for the era, for pretty much any book of the era. It's one of the lowest, rarest books in the CGC 9.8. Uncanny X-Men 120. Yeah, this one here. So, yeah, prices on both of these. So 121 in the CGC 9.8. I think a really good deal is going to be about $600. You might get it under 600 if you're you know, really patient and you get a good deal. Saw them before sell for $799.99 before. So yeah, that would be sort of the top of the range. For Uncanny X-Men 120 with that 4.1% CGC 9.8 ratio, it's extremely expensive. There's one online right now in an old case in Canada for $3,500, I think it is. So that in Canadian dollars ends up coming out to like $4,000 and something. And to be honest, I was tempted. I really, you know, I want to be serious when I talk to sellers, but I was really almost going to message him and go, hey, like, you know, can we work on this $3,500? Because I think for 120, if it came up in an auction, you could probably get it for maybe just a smidge under $3,000 would be my suspicion. I didn't see any in the CGC 9.8 selling on eBay completed listings. So I didn't even check Go Collect for that one either, but I think under $3,000 is a decent deal, and I would suspect for a really nice one in a new case, a newsstand edition too, which this raw actually is. I'll show you. Yeah, this raw is a newsstand edition. Doesn't have that kind of swipe through the barcode of the direct editions have. I would say probably over $3,000 for a CGC 9.8 in the like newsstand edition like this one. But you know, first full appearance of Alpha Flight is 121. 120, you get the first appearance of Vindicator, basically, who's the leader of Alpha Flight. And, you know, he was originally introduced, and we'll get into kind of some honorable mentions in 109 as Weapon Alpha. But most Alpha Flight fans know him as, like, Vindicator. And he was first, I believe, called Vindicator, or whatever, became Vindicator in 120. And that's the first cameo of Alpha Flight, too. So... yeah, and extremely rare in the CGC 9.8, so those prices, a good sort of, you know, if your budget wasn't over, you know, $2,000-$3,000, Uncanny X-Men 121, first full appearance of Alpha Flight, is a great book and a sort of, you know, it's quite expensive. You know, I think $600 would be a good deal, but still one, a great investment grade book. And yeah, you can kind of, buy whatever fits your budget. And yeah, 120, I mean, if an auction came up from one of my sellers that, you know, I felt comfortable with and that had good shipping to Canada, I would be very tempted to grab an Uncanny X-Men 120 in the CGC 9.8 white pages. So rare with that 4.1% CGC 9.8 ratio. Yeah, wow. Okay, next book is one I don't have in the CGC 9.8, but I got a raw copy. Decent kind of beat up raw copy though. Yeah, it's pretty much a reader's copy. I had this forever. Uncanny X-Men 129. So this book, you get a lot of first appearances. You get like first appearance of Kitty Pryde, first appearance of Emma Frost, who's the White Queen, cool villain, and first Sebastian Shaw. And if you kind of seen like X-Men First Class, I really like that movie. I enjoyed that one. X-Men First Class. Emma Frost and Sebastian Shaw are in X-Men First Class. So, you know, a great cover, classic cover. Let's look on the census here. 275 CGC 9.8s. 9.2% is the CGC 9.8 ratio. So of all graded copies, 9.2% of them are CGC 9.8s. That's really low. This is another kind of sweet spot book with a very nice low single-digit CGC 9.8 ratio. Very rare in the CGC 9.8. I saw really nice ones of this book go in an auction for $1,350. I think if you're patient, you get it closer to $1,000 in the CGC 9.8. You know, if you want, again, the newsstand version without the swipe of the direct version, a little bit more expensive, you know, yeah, I think that the one I saw go for $1,350 was a really nice newsstand one in a new case, like looking just pristine. So I think that's probably a little bit more of the top end. Although by now, certainly go over 1,500, I think, for this book. Yeah, all relating back, I think, to that CGC 9.8 ratio, 9.2%. That's really low compared to like a lot of these, you know, lower than Uncanny X-Men 121. So it's really relatively low. Not as low as 120, but 120 is the sort of grail of this era of X-Men comics. But 129 is one I would definitely consider, and hopefully you get it closer to $1,000. Yeah, a bunch of great first appearances and an awesome cover. The cover looks even better in a 9.8. This is one in the CGC 9.8. It is quite rare, and the colors just pop. And yeah, great kind of so many like action covers in this era that are just amazing. Yeah, I really want this one, to be honest. 129 in the CGC 9.8 white pages. Okay, next one is one I actually don't have in CGC 9.8 either. Is Uncanny X-Men 133. This is kind of the first solo Wolverine comic. Yeah, predates Wolverine Limited Series #1. So, and apparently just, yeah, the whole story is kind of just Wolverine. And, yeah, pretty thriving market for this book in the CGC 9.8. Yeah, look on the census, 218 CGC 9.8s out there. 14.8% is the CGC 9.8 ratio. And, yeah, I think if you get a really nice copy of this book around $500 or under $500, I think is a really good deal. You know, I think occasionally you see the sort of range would be sort of 500 to 600 people have paid up for this book, and occasionally they'll go under 500, and you know, maybe even certainly if you get lucky, maybe closer to 400, 415, kind of maybe an auction, or if you get a motivated seller on a best offer or something like that. But if you're a Wolverine fan, and Wolverine Limited Series is that book, there are thousands in the CGC 9.8. For an early 80s book, that's one of the most CGC 9.8s out there for an early 80s book. Wolverine Limited Series #1. Yeah, apparently it wasn't so limited. So Uncanny X-Men 133 is a great alternative to that book. And, you know, that book is such a classic kind of Frank Miller Wolverine cover. I would recommend that one too, to be honest. So classic. And it's so popular, that's one of the reasons why there's thousands in the CGC 9.8. But if you're a Wolverine fan, this is a really great underfollowed with, you know, there's thousands and thousands of limited series #1 Wolverine. There's 218 of these in the CGC 9.8. Yeah. So, yeah, if you're a Wolverine fan, this is one to get. And, you know, there's a lot of collectors on Instagram and that I respect and that have great collections that have this in the CGC 9.8. So, fits right in, certainly, if you're a Wolverine fan. And yeah, hopefully, you know, you get it for like $450-ish, or, you know, definitely under 500 would be a great deal. But maybe if it looks great in a newsstand, you know, a little over 500, I wouldn't really blame you for pulling the trigger on a nice one. Okay, so next one here, I wanted sort of do what I did there with the first appearance of Alpha Flight. We'll talk about Uncanny X-Men 141 and 142 right here, because, yeah, got both of them there. And kind of Days of Future Past, Part 1 and 2. Yeah, really classic covers that are really nostalgic to me. And you kind of get the first appearance of, like, the alternate future X-Men in this. And then it's, like, the death of the X-Men. For me, this cover is almost, like, more cooler and just... I remembered it more. The green and the Sentinel green cover was one I just really remembered as a kid. 142. Well, look on the census too, because it's pretty interesting on the census. There's 599 CGC 9.8 of Uncanny X-Men 141. 14.5% is the CGC 9.8 ratio. And I didn't look on the census this morning, but 142 is a little bit more relatively rare, actually. The CGC 9.8 ratio is a little bit lower than this book, which you'd think it might be the other way around, but yeah, and pricing-wise, it's a little bit the other way around, actually. I think this book's a little bit more expensive in the CGC 9.8. So in a newsstand, this one here, CGC 9.8 white pages, I paid $400 even. And I thought that was a pretty good deal. You know, I saw many directs sell for sort of like $340, $330. And I was laying off on those waiting for a newsstand because this one's a newsstand too. So I just wanted to have it because I had this one first. So I wanted to have it to match. So I think $400 for a newsstand version is a pretty decent price. You could probably get it maybe $375-ish, $350-ish if you're really patient. But I'm sure, you know, you see a lot of actually buying nows for this book for like $575, you know, this book in the newsstand. And I've laid off a couple of those because those tempted me in the past. But yeah, I grabbed this one for $400, which was good. Two books I would recommend though. Yeah, these are classic books. They're, you know, there's already a movie that came out of them from them already, so it's more of just the coolness and sort of all those X-Men fans coming out of the woodwork and wanting to buy this book once they get good jobs growing up and stuff like that. That's kind of happened to me. So yeah, X-Men, Uncanny X-Men 141 and 142, Days of Future Past 1 and 2. Yeah, getting sort of more toward the affordable end of the range, and I think, yeah, they're just great investment grade books for the price. Certainly affordable investment grade books. Yeah. Okay, so getting out of the sort of John Byrne era here, it was kind of hard to just pick a couple, you know, a few here to end the list. So I do have like a lot of honorable mentions though. But next one is a book I don't have in either the Raw or CGC 9.8, but it's Uncanny X-Men 244. First appearance of Jubilation Lee. And yeah, a really cool character, a hero, and a part of the X-Men. And I know, to let you know, I'm a huge fan of the X-Men animated series. Like, you know, growing up, I just thought Jubilee was always in the X-Men. So she is really a great, iconic X-Men character, I think. And that'll continue. So, yeah, I think even though there's some other more maybe eclectic picks or underfollowed X-Men picks, I still think First Jubilee is a really great one to have. There's 657 CGC 9.8s in the blue label. 29.6% is the CGC 9.8 ratio, which looks a little bit high. I actually was either going to choose this book or Uncanny X-Men 221, First Mr. Sinister. But Mr. Sinister book actually has a higher CGC 9.8 ratio, so this First Jubilee is more rare than First Mr. Sinister, relatively speaking. So I decided to include, you know, Uncanny X-Men 244 First Jubilee because it's more rare than First Mr. Sinister on this sort of comic 7 X-Men comics to invest in. So yeah, you know what? Price for this book. You know, you're getting up to $150, sort of right around that $150 level, I would say, for a really nice one. Yeah, right around 150 bucks if you're patient, kind of in an auction. I'm sure there's buy it nows out there for 200 and over, but yeah, you'll see quite a few of these. 657 on the census, so be patient. But yeah, a book I would still recommend, even though I think it does get a bit overlooked. I think First Jubilee still, you know, a book around 150 that I think is a great iconic X-Men first appearance to get. Okay, last book, I had to include this one. It's Uncanny X-Men 266. And you know what, I'm actually just realizing I forgot to bring out my raw copy, which I have one raw copy of first Gambit, but I'll just put up a picture. Uncanny X-Men 2, yeah, first Gambit is, again, similar to Jubilee, where if you really grew up on X-Men animated series in the 90s, you pretty much thought Gambit was an X-Men forever, because he was in, even in Days of Future Past, they have him as a main character in Days of Future Past cartoon, which clearly he's not in the books. It's like years and years before his first appearance. So, but yeah, Gambit is a very iconic, I think, modern X-Men hero. There's 2,442 CGC 9.8s in the blue label, so very popular, lots out there. Early 90s books, so there's going to be over a couple thousand for a popular character in an early 90s book on the census. 20.9% is the CGC 9.8 ratio, so yeah, really similar to New Mutants 98. The rarity, the relative rarity of this book is pretty much the same as New Mutants 98. So yeah, price for this book. I saw a really, really nice one, very nice centered one, go for $399.99 in a buy it now. Occasionally you'll see that. I think that's the higher end of the range for this book. But I've seen them even, like in the lull last year, there were some that I had seen go just over 300. So, if you're really lucky and not too picky on centering in the CGC 9.8, you might be able to get this closer to 300, but really nice crisp ones with nice centering, yeah, go closer to 400. So that's kind of the range. And yeah, I had mentioned New Mutants 98, this book being maybe 300, 400, similar rarity. New Mutants 98 being 650 to 750, let's call the range. So, yeah, maybe this book's undervalued when you look at it like that, but then you think Deadpool's probably more popular, so. But definitely want to include Uncanny X-Men 266, first full appearance of Gambit on a list of 7 CGC 9.8 X-Men comics to collect and invest. So let's get right into honorable mentions. Yeah, a lot of honorable mentions too. I'll probably end up forgetting something or mixing them up. Yeah, I'll try to go from oldest to new. So first honorable mention is X-Men 109. Which is the first Weapon Alpha, and I referenced it talking about X-Men 120. Weapon Alpha is basically Vindicator, but sort of the Weapon X Wolverine version, equivalent of Vindicator, who's the leader of Alpha Flight. So first, Weapon Alpha, pretty collected book, and one to consider, I think. Certainly if you really like Alpha Flight. I'm Canadian, and I sort of wanted to go after this book, but I think X-Men 121 is enough sort of Alpha Flight Vindicator for me. And certainly if I ever get a 120, that's pretty much first Vindicator, so. But this one, first Weapon Alpha, X-Men 109. Next one is a really cool one that I would really consider too, and I've seen it occasionally pop up in the CGC 9.8 white pages. It's very rare. It's X-Men 114, and this is the first time on the cover they have Uncanny. And to me, that's really special. I always really liked Uncanny X-Men. Like, that was just magic to me somehow. Like, it was just such a cool series, and goes back to why I think the John Byrne run of X-Men is like one of the greatest runs in comics. Just the Uncanny X-Men was really cool. So the first Uncanny X-Men 114's got a pretty cool cover. CGC 9.8 ratio for that book, 7.4%. Yeah, really rare. So that's for this kind of run of... There's kind of a run of 10 issues there where they're not really key issues. And this one's really like the rarest one. There's another one that's pretty rare, but this one's kind of the rarest one. Plus, it has the first time Uncanny is on the cover. So, yeah, special, such a wantable book. And I think whenever I do see this one pop up, it's like $800 to $900. Buy it now. So an expensive book, and that 7.4% CGC 9.8. It's really rare in the CGC. There's not a lot of CGC 9.8s out there. I think it's like 20 something, to be honest. But one to consider, possibly. Mention this one really quick. X-Men Annual number 14. This is the first brief appearance of Gambit, but it's not really a cameo. Like, I think he's got 4 or 5 pages, so to me, that's like a full appearance. So, and it predates Uncanny X-Men 266. So this is kind of a cool one. I have one actually in the raw that I'm just realizing I forgot to bring out again that I could have showed you, but X-Men Annual 14, first brief appearance of Gambit. Could be, if you're on a budget, or, maybe you already have some 266s. this could be a cool one if you're a Gambit fan. So after the Byrne run, John Byrne and Terry Austin and kind of Dave Cockrum helped them out too. After that whole run of comics, there's some sort of minor keys that I'm not the hugest of fans, but we'll just kind of go through them. One of them is Uncanny X-Men 158. It's the first appearance of Rogue as an X-Men. And pretty underfollowed too, decent cover. I don't mind that one. Next one is Uncanny X-Men 164, and that's the first binary as Carol Danvers. And this really kind of got hot as Carol Danvers was sort of going to be in the MCU and things like that, but this honestly isn't really one of my favorites. Yeah, just not one of my favorites. I'd actually recommend the next book. It's Uncanny X-Men 168, and it's first Madeline Pryor in X-Men. That, I think, is kind of a cooler one than first binary as Carol Danvers. Yeah, X-Men 168, kind of a cute cover, too, with Madeline Pryor on the cover. Yeah, 168, what was the other one there that I wanted to mention? Oh, yeah, a pretty underfollowed one from sort of that 150 to 200. Uncanny X-Men 184 is first appearance of Forge, who, again, if you're kind of in the fan of the X-Men animated series, was in the animated series a lot. And yeah, so this is kind of a really good underfollowed one. I think you can get this for under $100 easy in the CGC 9.8. Although not very popular, so it's probably pretty hard to find it, but you can get this one for a pretty cheap price. Yeah, Uncanny X-Men 184 is first Forge. And yeah, next one here is Uncanny X-Men 201. Yeah, so this is first Cable as Baby Nathan. So first appearance of Cable, but he's a baby. Yeah, a couple other keys in there we'll kind of, you know, skip over because I want to, you know, don't want to make the video too long, but two more here. Uncanny X-Men 248 is the first Jim Lee X-Men art, and he did such a classic run of you know, the self-titled X-Men book, and to get his first art in X-Men I think is really important, so that's definitely a cool one to go after too. And yeah, I believe an auction had just ended for that one, and I believe it's like 130-ish for that book, first Jim Lee X-Men art. I was thinking of bidding on that one too because it was nicely centered, but decided to pass. Yeah, that's X-Men, Uncanny X-Men 248, first Jim Lee art on X-Men. And last one is Uncanny X-Men 256, and I have this book in the raw too, and I forgot to bring it up. First new Psylocke, Uncanny X-Men 256, cool Jim Lee cover with Mandarin on it. Yeah, one I would recommend to getting sort of more into the modern X-Men books, but into the 90s. But yeah, I love some of the Jim Lee art on X-Men, so those last two books I think are pretty cool ones to get. But yeah, you know what, the original 7, as I said, I think that sweet spot for X-Men CGC 9.8 books is really the sort of John Byrne run. You know, before that, they're really expensive. But once you get into the John Byrne run, still lots of great first appearances, great stories, and awesome covers. And, you know, CGC 9.8s are, you know, we talked about the prices, so they're still somewhat affordable if you save up. And if you, yeah, as I said, if you want some X-Men comics, certainly whatever, CGC 9.8s or RAWs, I think right now is kind of the time to buy before this X-Men Marvel Cinematic Universe hype starts, because yeah, if they got the rights back, I'm sure it'll just be a matter of time before an MCU style X-Men movie comes out, and these books will get really hot. So concluding up, you know, I think the one thing that sticks out, and you know, it's such a great cover, and there's a lot of cool first appearances. I think I really just want an Uncanny X-Men 129 in the CGC 9.8. Love the cover. Yeah, first appearance of Kitty Pryde and Emma Frost and Sebastian Shaw, so just a lot of great villains. And first appearance of Kitty Pryde too. But great cover. And the rarity on that one, yeah, that 9.2 CGC 9.8 ratio, it's very rare. That's kind of in a sweet spot for price for me. I don't know if I want to spend too much more than that on one comic book. That book sort of being about 1,000 to like 1,350, let's call it the range. So yeah, Uncanny X-Men 129 kind of works for me, for my budget. And I think the other book is, you know, maybe look at possibly grabbing an Uncanny X-Men 120 in the CGC 9.8, which to me would be a complete, like, great investment. It's just so rare. So I think you buy that book and you hold it for 20, 30 years, or like you're going to do really well, even if, as I said, the prices probably are going to be near $3,000. But if an auction came up, or you know, I saw one from a Canadian seller and it was looking really great, I'd be very tempted. And the last one is 114. Yeah, it wasn't a part in the main list, but the first Uncanny on the cover also has a single-digit CGC 9.8 ratio of 7.4%, and that would kind of be one I would consider. Because, yeah, you know, I got, did I show you this one? I got the first appearance of Mr. Sinister. So I got, you know, I think I'm good for, you know, just key issues in general that, you know, aren't really rare and are sort of around the sort of 150 to 300 level, and, you know, getting about. I think I'm good on those books. So, yeah, now I think I really just want to focus on those single-digit, ultra-rare X-Men books from this era. And, yeah, those are the three. X-Men 129, first Kitty Pryde. Uncanny X-Men 120, first cameo Alpha Flight, first Vindicator. And then Uncanny X-Men 114, the first Uncanny on the cover with, yeah, really rare in the 9.8 too. Yeah, so, you know, maybe I'll hunt down those books, but I am pretty happy now that I have part 1 and 2 of Days of Future Past. And, you know, I'm pretty satisfied with, you know, I'm Canadian, so I wanted to kind of grab some Alpha Flight stuff. So I'm pretty satisfied, though, with the first full appearance of Alpha Flight. Although 120... with the first cameo and the first Vindicator, that's a big Alpha Flight book, obviously, too. And, yeah, that would be one that I would, like, if it came up, I'd probably just sell some of my stocks and think of it as, like, a straight investment swap. Because that is, I think, a really great investment-grade book, yeah. With that, 4.1% CGC 9.8 ratio on Uncanny X-Men 120, CGC 9.8. So, maybe I get lucky and track down one of those for a decent price, but... Okay, yeah, I hope you got some ideas for X-Men books, and as I said, I think it's a pretty decent time to buy before any of MCU X-Men hype could start to generate and start to make these books pretty hot, or hotter than they are now, so you can probably get some decent prices now. But, really appreciate watching today. Thanks so much. If you haven't already, I'd invite you to join the team and subscribe to Team CGC 9.8. Hit the bell to get all our latest notifications, and add me on Instagram and Twitter too. Got all the links in the description below for all that. But I'll have a list of the books too, all the books that we'll talk about in the description below as well, if you just want to look at a list of them. But yeah, you know what? I thought it was a timely video to talk about X-Men books, being that it's a decent time to buy. And I haven't really done an X-Men video in a while, and, you know, just love John Byrne, this whole run, and admittedly this video kind of focused mostly on that, but... yeah, I think such a great sweet spot for CGC 9.8 books. Certainly if you're into the CGC 9.8 books like me. But yeah, thanks very much for watching today. Hopefully you got some ideas. Appreciate all the support. Yeah, loving all the comments. And message me on Instagram if you ever want to talk about comics or whatever it might be. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you on the next one.